The crowd's roar hit Jack Rayner like a physical force, vibrating through the metal floor and into his bones. Above him, the massive holographic displays of Cradle of Titan Station flickered to life, each one showing his face from a different angle. The human maintenance engineer who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, translated simultaneously into 100 different languages. Tonight's appetizer match features something truly special. A human. Laughter rippled through the stands. Jack could see them now. Thousands of aliens packed into the ascending tiers. Crystalline Vorthak traders clinked their glass-like appendages in amusement. A cluster of 6-armed Mantari warriors pointed and jeered. Even the usually stoic Voidwalkers seemed to lean forward with interest. Jack flexed his fingers, still not quite believing how he'd ended up here. 3 days ago, he'd been fixing a coolant leak on the cargo hauler Persistence. Then pirates had hit them near the neutral zone. Next thing he knew, he was being dragged off the ship in chains, sold to the highest bidder, and dumped in this gladiatorial hellhole. And his opponent, the announcer continued, savoring each word, needs no introduction. 9 legs of pure destruction, 50 victories without a single defeat. The Blade King himself, Kalor Threx. The arena floor shook as a section of wall irised open. Kalor emerged like a nightmare given form. His exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights, each of his 9 legs moving in perfect synchronization. The bio-armor covering his torso pulsed with a sickly green light, and the massive blade arms he'd been surgically grafted with caught the light like liquid mercury. 10 seconds, someone shouted from the crowd. I give the meatbag 10 seconds. 5, another voice countered. Look at him shake. Jack wasn't shaking. He was calculating. The arena floor was made of adaptive metal, designed to shift and change during combat. The gravity generators hummed at a frequency that meant they were primed for adjustment. And Kalor's bioarmor had visible seams where the organic met the mechanical. You know what your problem is, a voice said from behind the energy barrier to his left. Jack turned to see Zira pressed against the transparent wall of the holding cells. The Felinar warrior looked like someone had crossed a panther with a human and given it military training. Her black fur was matted with dried blood from her own match earlier, one ear torn, but her golden eyes burned with intensity. I'm about to fight a 9-legged death machine with nothing but my maintenance coveralls, Jack offered. Your problem is you're thinking like prey. She bared her fangs in what might have been a smile. Kalor expects you to run, to cower, to die quickly for the crowd's amusement. And you think I should what? Exactly, challenge him to a dance-off. Despite everything, Zyra actually laughed. It was a rough sound, like gravel in a blender. I think you should remember that humans didn't conquer their world by being anyone's entertainment. The energy barrier flickered and died. The match was about to begin. Gorvik, the arena master, materialized on his floating platform above the killing floor. His grotesquely obese form squeezed into a suit that probably cost more than Jack had made in his entire life. The Gulathi crime lord's 4 eyes focused on Jack with barely concealed glee. Honored guests, Gorvik's voice oozed false charm. The betting windows are now open. Current odds stand at 1,000 to 1 against the human, lasting 30 seconds. 10,000 to 1 against him, lasting a full minute. And for those feeling particularly adventurous, 1 million to 1 against him, actually landing a blow on our champion. The crowd erupted in a frenzy of betting. Credit chips changed hands so fast the air itself seemed to shimmer with transferred wealth. Kalor hadn't moved yet. He stood at the far end of the arena, studying Jack with the patience of a predator who knew its prey had nowhere to run. When he finally spoke, his voice was like grinding metal. Human. The word dripped with disgust. Your species sells itself as mechanics and servants across the galaxy. You build things for others to use. You fix what others break. You are the universe's janitors. He took a step forward, and the floor cracked under his weight. I will make this quick, not from mercy, but because you're not worth the effort of creativity. Jack rolled his shoulders and did something that made the entire arena go silent. He laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a hysterical laugh. A genuine, amused laugh, like Kalor had just told him a particularly good joke. You know what's funny, Jack said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Everyone keeps telling me what humans can't do. Can't survive in deep space without suits. Can't match other species in strength. Can't live without water for more than a few days. He started walking forward, not away from Kalor, but toward him. But you know what they never ask. They never ask what humans had to become to survive on a death world like Earth. They never ask why we're the only species that domesticated predators for fun. They never ask why we're the ones every other race calls when something impossible needs fixing. Kalor's blade arms began to vibrate, a sign of impending attack. You talk too much for dead meat. Probably, Jack admitted. But here's the thing about being a maintenance engineer. Kalor, I fix things. And right now, he stopped walking, just outside of Kalor's strike range. I'm looking at you, at this arena, at this whole setup, and all I can see are things that need breaking before they can be fixed. The crowd held its breath. Gorvik leaned forward on his platform, all four eyes wide with anticipation. Zira pressed harder against the barrier, her claws extended. Kalor moved. 9 legs propelled him forward with the speed of a freight train. His blade arms swept in a scissoring motion that had decapitated a dozen opponents. The crowd started to roar in anticipation of the killing blow. Jack dropped, not backward in retreat, not to the side in a dodge. Straight down, sliding on his knees across the smooth metal floor, using Kalor's own momentum against him. The blade arms whistled through the air, where his head had been a microsecond before. Jack's slide carried him directly under Kalor's thorax, and as he passed, he grabbed one of the middle legs and yanked. It shouldn't have worked. Kalor weighed at least 4 times what Jack did, but Jack had grabbed the leg just as it was lifting for the next step, when it bore no weight, and pulled it in the direction it was already moving. The result was subtle, but devastating. Kalor's perfect synchronization faltered, just for a moment, just enough for him to stumble. The champion caught himself before falling, but the psychological damage was done. A human had just made the undefeated Blade King stumble. The arena went dead silent. Then someone started a slow clap, then another, then another. Jack stood up, brushing dust off his coveralls. Round 1 to the janitor, I guess. Kalor turned slowly, and for the first time in 50 matches, there was something new in his eyes. Uncertainty. You... Kalor's voice was different now, quieter, more dangerous. You made me stumble. Yeah, well, Jack shrugged, already calculating angles and distances for what came next. They said humans couldn't survive the arena. Figured I might as well make it interesting. Gorvik's voice crackled over the speakers, trying to regain control of the narrative. A lucky move from the human, but luck won't save him from what comes next, Kalor. Show this primitive what happens when you anger a champion. But Jack wasn't listening to Gorvik anymore. He was watching Kalor's bioarmor, noting how the green light pulsed faster when the alien was agitated. He was feeling the subtle vibrations in the floor that meant the gravity adjusters were warming up. He was remembering every dirty trick he'd learned fixing ships in the worst parts of the galaxy. Hey, Kalor, Jack called out, unable to resist one more jab. Just so you know, I'm not trying to survive your arena. He smiled, and it was not a nice smile. I'm trying to solve it. The Blade King charged again, but this time, there was rage mixed with his precision. This time, it was personal. And high above in her cell, Zira watched the human engineer face down, death itself, and thought something she hadn't thought in years. Maybe, just maybe, this human might actually pull it off. The real fight was about to begin. The arena floor suddenly rippled like water, sections rising and falling in predetermined patterns. Jack had seen this before in the previous matches he'd been forced to watch from his cell. The Cradle of Titans wasn't just a killing floor. It was a dynamic battlefield that could become a dozen different hellscapes at Gorvik's whim. Environmental shift activated, the announcer's voice boomed with theatrical excitement. Let's see how our contestants handle the scorching sands of Kepler 438b. The temperature spiked instantly. The metal floor began to glow with heat, and jets of superheated air burst from hidden vents. Within seconds, the arena had transformed into a furnace that would have killed most unprotected life forms. Kalor's bioarmor adapted immediately, the green glow shifting to a deeper emerald as it regulated his temperature. He laughed, a sound like metal tearing. Your weak flesh will cook in minutes, human. I don't even need to touch you now. But Jack was already moving, not randomly, but with purpose. He'd spent 3 years maintaining the cooling systems on the Persistence, working in engine rooms that could hit these temperatures when the heat sinks failed. His coveralls were standard maintenance gear, designed for exactly these conditions. They wouldn't last forever, but they'd last long enough. You ever notice, Jack called out, vaulting over a rising metal dune that had formed in the floor, how arena masters always pick environments that look impressive, but don't actually favor either fighter. Kalor pursued, his 9 legs giving him perfect stability, even on the shifting terrain. Your words are the desperate rambling of a dying creature. Maybe. Jack slid down the other side of the dune, the heat from the metal burning through his coveralls. Or maybe I'm pointing out that Gorvik up there doesn't want you to win too quickly. Bad for business. The crowd wants a show. From her cell, Zero watched Jack's movements with growing interest. He wasn't just running. Every step, every dodge, every slide was taking him closer to the arena's edge, where the environmental controls were housed. She'd fought here 6 times and never noticed the pattern. But the human had figured it out in minutes. No warrior has ever survived the scorching sands for more than 2 minutes, Gorvik announced to the crowd, his voice betraying a hint of nervousness as Jack continued to evade Kalor's attacks. Place your final bets now. The floor shifted again, this time creating a valley that funneled both fighters toward each other. Kalor's blade arms sang through the air, each strike powerful enough to cut through starship hull plating. Jack twisted, ducked, rolled, each movement buying him precious seconds. Then it happened. A vent opened directly beneath Jack's feet, a column of superheated air that should have launched him into Kalor's waiting blades. Instead, Jack grabbed the edge of the vent as he was thrown upward, using the momentum to flip over Kalor entirely. As he passed overhead, he did something that made Zira's eyes widen. He spat. Not at Kalor, but at a specific spot on the bioarmor where the organic components met the mechanical. The saliva instantly vaporized in the heat, but the brief temperature differential was enough. A tiny crack appeared in the armor's surface. Did you just... Kalor spun around, genuine shock in his voice. Did you just damage my armor with spit? Jack landed hard, rolling to dissipate the impact. Human saliva, slightly acidic, full of enzymes, normally useless, but flash boil it against a thermal reactive organic compound. He grinned. Chemistry, Kalor. Same reason I knew your bioarmor would have trouble with rapid temperature changes. The crowd had gone silent again. On his platform, Gorvik's 4 eyes were blinking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. Impossible, Kalor growled, but he was already checking the crack with one of his smaller manipulator arms. No human could know the composition of my armor. No human's supposed to survive your arena either. Jack was circling now, keeping Kalor turning, making him work those 9 legs on the unstable surface. But here's what you didn't know about humans. Kalor, we're not the galaxy's janitors because we're weak. We're the janitors because we understand how everything breaks. The environment shifted again. The heat vanished as suddenly as it had come, replaced by a bitter cold that froze the moisture in the air. The frozen wastes of Proxima C, according to the announcer. The rapid temperature change made Kalor's bioarmor flicker. The crack Jack had created spreading just a millimeter more. You know what else is funny, Jack continued, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. You've won 50 matches, Kalor. That means you've fought in this arena at least 50 times. You know every environment, every trick, every advantage. Kalor charged again, his movements slightly slower in the cold. His blade arms still moved with lethal precision, but there was a fractional delay between thought and action now. But you know what you've never had to do. Jack dove between Kalor's legs, came up behind him, and kicked the back of his rearmost leg joint. Not hard enough to damage, just enough to annoy. You've never had to adapt. You've never had to think. You've just had to be stronger and faster than whatever they threw at you. Silence. Kalor spun with surprising speed, his blade catching Jack's shoulder. First blood. The crowd roared. Jack staggered back, his left arm hanging useless, blood already freezing on his coveralls. But he was still smiling. See, that's the difference between us. You just drew first blood and the crowd loves you for it. But I've been bleeding since I was born. Humans come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. We evolved getting hurt, getting beaten, getting knocked down. He steadied himself, his good hand pressed against the wound. You want to know the real reason they call us survivors? Kalor. It's not because we're tough. It's because we're too stupid to know when we're supposed to die. In her cell, Zyra found herself leaning forward, her claws unconsciously extended. The human was bleeding badly, his left arm useless, facing an opponent who had every advantage. By all rights, he should be terrified, begging for mercy, or at least trying to escape. Instead, he was walking forward, toward Kalor, toward certain death. What are you doing? Kalor actually took a step back. You're injured. You're dying. Probably, Jack agreed. But here's something else about humans you didn't know. We're persistence predators. Our ancestors didn't kill prey by being stronger or faster. They killed it by following it, wearing it down, making it run until its heart gave out. His eyes locked on Kalor's. I don't need to beat you, Kalor. I just need to outlast you. The arena floor began to shift again, preparing for another environmental change. But this time, Jack was ready. He'd been counting the seconds, mapping the patterns, understanding the rhythm of Gorvik's show. 3 seconds until the next shift, he said quietly. Gravity increase, if I'm right. You're about to weigh 3 times as much. Kalor's eyes widened just as the gravity generators kicked in. The champion, with his 9 legs and massive bioarmor, suddenly weighed nearly a ton. He staggered, his legs straining to support him. Jack, lighter, and with a lower center of gravity, stayed upright. See, I knew Gorvik would try this. It's the one environment that affects larger fighters more than smaller ones. And you, Kalor. He walked forward, still steady despite his injury. You're definitely the larger fighter. For the first time in 50 matches, Kalor Threx fell to his knees. The arena exploded. Some spectators screamed in outrage, others in excitement. Credits flew as bets were frantically recalculated. On his platform, Gorvik was shouting into his communicator, demanding his technicians restore normal gravity. But Jack wasn't done. You called us the galaxy's janitors, he said, standing over the struggling champion. But you know what janitors really do, Kalor. We don't just clean up messes. He reached down with his good hand and grabbed one of Kalor's blade arms, right at the joint where organic met mechanical. We know exactly where every piece of trash belongs, with a twist that he'd perfected on 1,000 broken servo joints. Jack dislocated Kalor's blade arm. The champion's scream echoed through the station. Zyra stood up in her cell, her heart racing. The human had not only survived, he'd turned the arena itself into his weapon, and from the look in his eyes, he was just getting started. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer's voice had lost all its theatrical confidence. The human has lasted 3 minutes, a new record for his species in our arena. Jack looked up at Gorvik's platform, blood still running down his arm, and gave a mock salute. Just getting warmed up or cooled down. Depends on what you throw at us next. The gravity returned to normal, and Kalor struggled back to his feet, one blade arm hanging useless. The crack in his bio-armor had spread further, green light leaking from it like radioactive blood. You... Kalor's voice was different now. Not angry, not dismissive. Something else. You're not just a maintenance engineer. Sure I am, Jack replied, tearing a strip from his coveralls to bind his shoulder. I told you from the beginning. I fix things. And right now. He looked around the arena, at the crowd, at Gorvik, at the whole sick spectacle. This whole place needs fixing. The environment controls activated again, but neither fighter moved. They stood facing each other, predator and prey no longer certain which was which. They said humans couldn't survive the arena, Jack said quietly, just loud enough for Kalor to hear. Want to help me prove them wrong? Kalor tilted his head, a gesture that looked almost curious. You would spare me after everything. I'm not here to kill you, Kalor. Never was. Jack's eyes were steady. I'm here to break the game. High above. Zyra pressed both hands against the barrier of her cell. She'd heard something in the human's voice, seen something in his stance. This wasn't desperation or false bravado. The human had a plan, and somehow, impossibly, she thought it might actually work. The arena floor began to level out, returning to its default configuration. The environmental systems cycled down, leaving only the standard atmosphere and harsh overhead lights. It was like the Colosseum itself was taking a breath, preparing for what came next. Kalor reset his stance, compensating for his damaged blade arm. The green light leaking from his cracked bio-armor had started to pulse in an irregular rhythm, like a heartbeat under stress. You speak of breaking the game, human. Many have tried. Their bones decorate Gorvik's trophy room. Yeah, about that, Jack said, wiping blood from his face with his good arm. I've been thinking about Gorvik's business model. 50 matches for you, Kalor. How many other champions before you? How many fights per day? How many credits flowing through this place? He started walking sideways, forcing Kalor to pivot to track him. The champion's 9 legs moved with less coordination now, the damaged systems throwing off his natural rhythm. What does economics matter when you're about to die? Kalor's working blade arm twitched with barely restrained violence. Everything, Jack replied. See, I've been watching the crowd, the betting patterns, the way Gorvik times the environmental changes. This isn't about blood sport. It's about manipulation. The house always wins because the house controls the game. Up on his platform, Gorvik barked something in his native tongue to his assistants. The universal translators didn't catch it, but Jack recognized the tone, panic disguised as anger. 30 seconds until next environmental shift, the announcer declared, trying to rebuild the theatrical tension. Will our unlikely human survivor make it to the 5-minute mark? Jack laughed again, but this time it was calculating. 5 minutes. That's the magic number, isn't it? Kalor. No human has ever lasted 5 minutes. It's the benchmark Gorvik uses to set the odds. The floor beneath them started to vibrate, a warning of the coming change. Jack could feel it through his boots. the specific frequency that meant they were about to get something special. Not just heat or cold or gravity, but something worse. "The toxic storm of Titan 9, he said, before the announcer could. "Corrosive atmosphere, limited visibility, toxic rain that eats through most armor in minutes. It's Gorvik's favorite for execution matches." Kalor's eyes narrowed. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've been fixing the environmental systems in places like this for years. You think this is the only death pit in the galaxy? You think Gorvik invented this setup?" Jack's smile was grim. "I've repaired atmospheric processors in a dozen illegal fighting rings. They all use the same base tech, the same control patterns, the same predictable rotation of environments." The change hit them like a physical wall. Green-yellow fog rolled across the arena floor, thick and caustic. The first drops of toxic rain began to fall from hidden sprayers in the ceiling, each drop sizzling where it hit the metal floor. Kalor's bioarmor immediately began smoking where the rain touched it. The organic components were dissolving, the careful balance between biological and mechanical failing. He roared in pain and rage, charging through the fog toward where Jack had been standing. But Jack wasn't there. He'd moved the instant before the change, positioning himself under one of the few maintenance overhangs built into the arena wall. Spaces that weren't meant for fighters, but for the automated cleaning drones that would come in after matches to collect the bodies. "You're cheating," Gorvik's voice boomed over the speakers. "All pretense of neutrality gone. Fighting from the maintenance areas is forbidden." "Really?" Jack called back. "Show me the rule. Show the crowd the specific regulation that says I can't use every part of this arena to survive." He stepped out, just long enough to be seen, then ducked back as Kalor's blade whistled past. "Or is it just that no one's ever thought to use your own infrastructure against you?" The crowd was murmuring now, a sound that grew louder with each passing second. Some were angry at the perceived cheating, but others were cheering. The human was thinking, adapting, surviving in ways they'd never seen. Kalor slammed into the wall beside Jack's shelter, his blade arm carving deep gouges in the metal. "Come out and face me, coward." "Coward." Jack peeked around the corner. "You're wearing bioarmor and wielding weapons that could cut a shuttle in half. I'm in maintenance coveralls with one working arm. Who's the coward here?" He rolled out of cover, grabbing a piece of corroded metal that had fallen from Kalor's armor. The toxic rain was eating through his coveralls now, leaving chemical burns on his skin. But he didn't slow down. Pain was just information. And right now, it was telling him exactly how long he had before this environment killed them both. 2 minutes until total armor failure for you," he told Kalor, dodging another strike. 3 minutes until my coveralls are gone. 4 minutes until the rain hits vital organs. Neither of us wins if we keep fighting in this. Then we die together." Kalor lunged forward, accepting a spray of toxic rain full in the face to get closer to Jack. But Jack did something unexpected. Instead of dodging away, he stepped into the attack, getting inside Kalor's reach. The blade arm passed over his head, and suddenly he was pressed against Kalor's thorax, inside the minimal shelter of the champion's own body. "Or," Jack said, his voice tight with pain as the rain burned his back, "we both survived together." He reached up with his good hand and found the main coupling where Kalor's bioarmor connected to his nervous system. It was the most vulnerable point, the place where removing the armor would cause the most pain. Jack's fingers found the release mechanism. "What are you doing?" Kalor tried to pull away, but Jack held on. "I'm giving you a choice," Jack said through gritted teeth. "Your armor is dying. It's going to take you with it. I can disconnect it, save your life. But you'll be vulnerable, defenseless." He met Kalor's eyes. "Or you can keep trying to kill me, and we both dissolve in this acid rain. Your call." For a moment, that lasted forever. They stood there in the toxic storm, predator and prey, champion and challenger, two beings from different worlds faced with the same choice, pride or survival. Kalor made his decision. "Do it!" Jack triggered the release. The bio-armor fell away in sections, each piece hitting the ground with a wet, dying sound. Kalor screamed as the neural connections severed, his nervous system firing randomly from the sudden disconnection. He collapsed to his 9 knees, vulnerable for the first time in years. The toxic rain began to burn Kalor's exposed exoskeleton. Without the bio-armor, he was just as vulnerable as Jack. "Now what?" Kalor gasped, his voice different without the armor's amplification. Smaller, more real. Jack grabbed him, all 100+ kilograms of alien champion, and started dragging him toward another maintenance alcove. "Now we do what humans do best. We survive together." They stumbled into the shelter just as the acid rain intensified. Both were burned, bleeding, barely standing. The crowd had gone completely silent. "This is impossible," Gorvik was saying, his voice carrying despite not being on the speakers. "They're cooperating." "They can't cooperate." In her cell, Zira was on her feet, her claws scratching at the barrier. She could see what was happening, what the human had orchestrated. It wasn't just survival. It was revolution. "Hey, Kalor," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. Both fighters were slumped against the wall, watching the toxic rain eat away at the arena floor. "Want to know a secret?" Kalor turned one of his compound eyes toward him. What secret could matter now? Jack pulled something from his boot. A small device, no bigger than a credit chip. It was sparking, damaged by the rain, but still functional. "I've been recording everything. Every environment change, every pattern, every tell in Gorvik's system. This little thing," he held it up. "It's been broadcasting to every pirate frequency in the sector." Kalor's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Every underground fighting ring, every criminal syndicate, every anti-slavery organization in 3 systems now knows exactly how Gorvik runs his games. They know the patterns, the weaknesses, the ways to beat the system." Jack coughed, tasting blood. "Even if we die here, the game is already broken." The toxic storm began to clear, the environmental system cycling to the next phase. But something was wrong. The arena floor was more damaged than it should be, the acid having eaten through to sensitive systems below. Sparks flew from exposed conduits. Emergency lights began flashing. The gravity generators made an unhealthy whining sound. "System failure imminent," an automated voice announced. "Evacuate the arena floor immediately." Gorvik appeared on every screen, his 4 eyes wild with rage. "Continue the match. Kill each other. Someone has to die." Jack looked at Kalor. Kalor looked at Jack. "No," they said in unison. The crowd exploded, some cheering, some booing, all of them on their feet. This had never happened before. 2 fighters, refusing to continue. "You want to really break things?" Kalor asked, a strange expression on his alien features that might have been a smile. "Always," Jack replied. Together, the human maintenance engineer and the 9-legged former champion stood up. They walked to the center of the arena, side by side, as the floor continued to spark and buckle beneath them. "We're done," Jack announced, his voice carrying to the recording devices still functioning. "This match is over. We both survive, or we both walk away. Your choice, Gorvik." The arena master's image flickered on the screens, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. For the first time in the history of the Cradle of Titans, he had no idea what to do. And in her cell, Zira began to laugh. It started small, then grew, until her whole body shook with it. The human hadn't just survived the arena. He'd turned their greatest champion into an ally. The real game was just beginning. The gravity generators made another grinding sound, then suddenly doubled their output. Jack and Kalor were slammed to their knees, the increased force making every movement feel like lifting a mountain. Around them, pieces of the damaged arena floor began to buckle and tear, metal screaming as it bent under its own multiplied weight. Manual override detected, the automated system announced. Gravity set to 3 times standard. 4 times. 5 times. Gorvik's trying to crush us, Kalor gasped. His 9 legs splayed wide to distribute the increasing weight. Green blood leaked from where his bioarmor had been connected, the fluid now seeming to pour downward, like heavy syrup. Jack's vision was starting to go dark around the edges. The human body wasn't designed for this kind of pressure. His injured shoulder felt like it was being torn apart, and he could feel his ribs creaking under the strain of his own body weight. 6 times standard gravity, the voice continued dispassionately. But Jack was laughing. It was a wheezing, painful sound, but genuine. He's panicking. Doesn't realize what he's doing. What? Kalor managed to turn one eye toward him. The arena. It's not built for this. The infrastructure. Jack coughed, tasting copper. I maintained a grav gym once. Anything over 4 times standard without proper reinforcement. A massive crack appeared in the arena floor, spreading outward like lightning. The supports beneath them, never designed for this level of stress, began to fail catastrophically. 7 times standard gravity. The floor gave way. Jack and Kalor fell through into the maintenance level below, landing hard on a catwalk that immediately began to bend under their multiplied weight. Around them, the guts of the arena were exposed massive conduits carrying power, cooling systems for the environmental controls, and the complex machinery that made the death matches possible. The gravity here was inconsistent. Pockets of normal gravity mixed with crushing zones, where the field generators overlapped incorrectly. It was chaos, and it was exactly what Jack had hoped for. "Can you move?" Jack asked Kalor, pulling himself along the catwalk using his one good arm. "Better than you," Kalor replied, his 9 legs finding purchase on multiple surfaces. Without his bioarmor, he was faster, more agile. "What's your plan, human?" "Same as before. Break everything." Jack pointed toward a massive pillar of light in the center of the maintenance level. "That's the main power coupling for the entire arena. We take that out. We shut down everything. Gravity, barriers, locks, everything." "The barriers?" Kalor's eyes widened with understanding. "The prisoner cells." "Every fighter Gorvik has captured. Every slave waiting for their turn to die." Jack started crawling toward the power coupling, fighting against gravity that shifted and changed with every meter. "They all go free." Above them, they could hear Gorvik screaming orders. Security forces were mobilizing, but they were having the same problem with the fluctuating gravity. The sound of bodies hitting walls and floors echoed through the structure. "This is insane," Kalor said, but he was following Jack, using his multiple legs to navigate the treacherous terrain. "You planned this." "I planned to survive," Jack admitted, reaching a section where the gravity suddenly reversed. He had to grab onto the catwalk to keep from falling upward. "Everything else is just creative improvisation." They were halfway to the power coupling when the security forces found them. 6 Gulathi guards in power armor, magnetic boots keeping them stable despite the gravity chaos. They raised their weapons. "Stand down, prisoners!" the lead guard shouted. "Return to the arena floor for summary execution." Jack looked at Kalor. "You know, I really hate that word, execution, like we're just problems to be solved." "Agreed," Kalor said, and for the first time since losing his armor, he smiled. It was a terrifying expression on his alien face. "Shall we solve them instead?" What happened next would be retold in bars and black markets across 3 systems. The human engineer and the 9-legged champion, both wounded and exhausted, took on 6 fully armed guards in a maintenance tunnel where gravity couldn't decide which way was up. Jack used the environment like a weapon, triggering emergency vents to blast guards off their feet, using his knowledge of the systems to create pockets of zero gravity that sent them tumbling. Kalor, even without his bioarmor, was still a warrior who'd won 50 death matches. His claws found gaps in power armor. His strength still formidable even when fighting against crushing gravity. One guard managed to get a shot off, the energy beam searing past Jack's head and rupturing a coolant line. Super-cooled liquid sprayed everywhere, flash freezing on contact. Jack redirected the spray with a kicked panel, coating 2 guards in ice. "Behind you!" Kalor shouted. Jack spun to see a guard raising his weapon. Point-blank range. No way to dodge. This was it. This was how he died. Not in the arena, but in a maintenance tunnel. So close to victory. The shot never came. The guard crumpled, revealing Zira standing behind him, her claws dripping with blood. Beside her stood a dozen other fighters, all freed when a section of the barrier system had failed. "Thought you could use some help," she said, that predator's grin wide on her feline features. "How did you—" "Your little gravity stunt shorted out half the containment systems." She helped Jack to his feet, surprisingly gentle. "Every fighter in C-Block is free, and word is spreading." More freed prisoners were arriving, all different species, all bearing the scars of the arena. They looked at Jack and Kalor with expressions ranging from confusion to awe. "Is it true?" a young Tyrellian asked, his scales still showing the burns from his last match. "Did a human really break the arena?" "Not just a human," Kalor said, standing tall despite his injuries. "All of us, together." Jack pushed forward toward the power coupling, the freed fighters following. "Gorvik has run this place on fear for years, made us fight each other for his profit. But here's what he never understood." He reached the coupling, his engineer's eye immediately identifying the weak points. "We're not each other's enemies. Never were." He began to work, his one good hand moving with practiced efficiency. "Kalor, I need you to hold this. Zara, can you reach that connector up there? You, with the scales. What's your name?" "Thresk," the Tyrellian replied. "Thresk, you're from a high-gravity world. Right, I need you to bend this support strut. Exactly 45 degrees. No more." They worked together, dozens of different species, following the directions of a half-dead human engineer. Above them, the arena was in chaos. The gravity fluctuations had spread throughout the station. Gorvik's empire was literally falling apart. "Almost there," Jack muttered, sweat and blood dripping onto the exposed circuits. "Just need to reverse the polarity on the main stabilizer and—" "Stop." Gorvik himself stood at the entrance to the maintenance level, flanked by his personal guard. The crime lord's expensive suit was torn, his 4 eyes wild with rage. He held a military-grade plasma cannon, the kind that could vaporize half the room. "You think you can destroy everything I've built?" Gorvik's voice was shaking. "I own this station, I own all of you." "No," Jack said quietly, his hand still on the power coupling. "You don't own anyone anymore." "I'll kill you all!" "Go ahead," Jack said. "Vaporize us. But you know what happens when you fire that weapon this close to a power coupling, carrying this much energy." Gorvik's eyes widened as he realized. The explosion would take out half the station, including him. "That's the thing about power. Gorvik," Jack continued, still working on the coupling. "Real power isn't about owning people. It's about knowing exactly which wire to cut." He pulled the final connection. Every light in the arena went out. Every barrier, every lock, every system that kept Gorvik's empire running, died in an instant. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. But more importantly, every slave collar, every tracking device, every piece of tech that marked the fighters as property, went dead. For the first time in years, they were free. "You're ruined," Zira said to Gorvik, stepping forward. "The moment this gets out, every authority in the sector will come for you. Illegal fighting rings, slavery, murder. Plus," Jack added, finally letting himself slide down to sit against the power coupling, "I've been broadcasting everything. Remember your confession about owning us. That's already reached about 50 different law enforcement agencies. Gorvik's plasma cannon wavered between targets, his four eyes blinking rapidly in the way that meant his species was about to have a nervous breakdown. "This isn't over," he spat. "I have friends, resources. I'll rebuild." "Maybe," Jack said, "but not here and not with us." One by one, the freed fighters stepped forward, surrounding Gorvik and his guards. Not attacking, not threatening, just standing, unified, free. Gorvik backed away, his guards following. They retreated into the darkness of the station, and nobody tried to stop them. They weren't worth it. "So," Kalor said, sitting down next to Jack, "what now?" Jack looked around at the dozens of freed fighters, all looking at him expectantly. Now we get the hell off this station before it falls apart completely. And then," he smiled, "then we make sure this never happens again. Anywhere." "That's a big goal for a maintenance engineer," Zira observed. "Good thing I'm not doing it alone." Jack looked at Kalor, at Zira, at all of them. Turns out, humans aren't the only species that's too stubborn to give up. The station shuddered around them. Another system failing somewhere in its superstructure. But nobody panicked. They'd faced worse in the arena. They'd survived Gorvik's games. Together, they'd survived this too. The evacuation was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Jack, despite barely being able to stand, found himself directing the exodus like a conductor with a very unusual orchestra. "Atmospheric breach in Section 12, someone shouted. "Seal it from the other side and reroute through Maintenance Shaft B," Jack replied without thinking. "The emergency bulkheads should hold for another 20 minutes. They moved through the dying station in groups, helping the wounded, carrying those who couldn't walk. Species that had been forced to kill each other just hours ago now worked together with singular purpose survival. Kalor carried Jack when the human's legs finally gave out, all 9 of his own legs moving with surprising gentleness. "You're heavier than you look," the former champion commented. "It's all the determination," Jack wheezed. "Weighs a ton." They reached the docking bay to find it in lockdown. Massive blast doors sealed shut. Gorvik's final act of spite. But Jack had expected this. "Zira, remember when I said I was broadcasting everything?" "Yeah. I might have exaggerated. It was short range only. But you know who was definitely in range. Every ship docked at this station." As if on cue, the blast doors shuddered. Then again. Then they began to buckle inward. "What's happening?" Thresk asked. "Help," Jack said simply. The doors exploded inward, and through the smoke came the most beautiful sight any of them had ever seen, a mixed fleet of ships, cargo haulers, personal shuttles, even a few military vessels, all with their weapons trained on the door they'd just blown open. "This is Captain Walsh of the Persistence," a voice boomed over loudspeakers. "We received your distress signal. Jack, time to go home." Jack laughed, though it turned into a cough. "Walsh, you beautiful bastard. I thought the pirates got you." "They tried. Then they heard your broadcast about what was happening here. Turns out even pirates have standards. They're actually part of the rescue fleet." The freed fighters rushed toward the ships, but Jack held back, looking at the station that had nearly been their tomb. Kalor and Zira stayed with him. "Something wrong?" Zira asked. "Gorvik's still out there," Jack said. "He'll set up shop somewhere else. Do this again." "Then we stop him," Kalor said firmly. "We know his methods now, his patterns. Kalor looked down at the human who'd saved his life by taking away everything that had made him powerful. "I've won 50 fights, human. But you taught me something more valuable than victory. You taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. Besides," Zira added, her tail swishing with amusement, "someone needs to keep you from getting captured by pirates again." As they boarded the Persistence, Jack was surprised to find the cargo bay transformed into a makeshift medical center. Even more surprising was who was running it. Dr. Martinez. Jack stared at the woman in medical whites. "But you're human." She smiled, already moving to treat his injuries. "Did you think you were the only human in this sector? We've been tracking Gorvik's operation for months, waiting for an opportunity." She began working on his shoulder. "Never imagined it would be a maintenance engineer who brought it all down." "Not just me," Jack insisted, looking at the dozens of fighters being treated around him. "All of us." Captain Walsh appeared, his weathered face showing relief. "Jack, what you did. The footage is already spreading across the hypernet. Every civilized world in 3 systems is calling for investigations into illegal fighting rings. And Gorvik has bigger problems. Turns out broadcasting evidence of his crimes to a bunch of pirates was brilliant. They're hunting him now. He broke their code, dealing in slaves from protected territories." Jack felt the sedatives Dr. Martinez had given him starting to work. His eyes were getting heavy. "Hey, Walsh." "Yeah. Next time you need a coolant leak fixed, maybe hire someone else." The captain laughed. "Are you kidding after this? You're the most famous human in the sector. The one who walked into a death arena and broke it from the inside." But Jack was already fading into unconsciousness, his last sight being Kalor and Zira standing guard over his medical bed, arguing about something in that comfortable way that suggested the beginning of a beautiful friendship. He woke up 3 days later in the Persistence's medical bay. His shoulder was wrapped in healing gel, his burns treated, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't in immediate danger of dying. "About time." Zira's voice came from his left. She was curled up in a chair that was definitely not designed for her species, reading something on a datapad. "Kalor owes me 50 credits. I said you'd wake up today." "Kalor's here." "Half the fighters are," she said. "Refused to leave until they knew you were okay. Captain Walsh isn't happy about the overcrowding, but nobody wants to argue with a bunch of arena survivors." Jack tried to sit up, winced, and thought better of it. "What happened to the station?" "Complete structural collapse about 6 hours after we left. The authorities are calling it a tragic accident." She showed him her datapad. "But the real story is everywhere. Footage of the fight, the escape, everything. You're famous." "Great," Jack muttered. "Just what I wanted." "There's more." Zira's expression grew serious. "The Galactic Council is convening an emergency session about illegal fighting rings. They want witnesses, survivors who can testify. Let me guess. They want the famous human who broke the arena. They want all of us. But yes, you especially." She paused. "There are hundreds more places like Gorvik Station, thousands of fighters still trapped. The Council could shut them all down. But they need evidence, testimony, public pressure." Jack was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he smiled. "You know, I'm just a maintenance engineer." "So you keep saying. But I'm really good at fixing broken things. And this whole system, it's pretty broken." Zira's grin showed all her teeth. "So we're doing this taking on every illegal fighting ring in the sector." The door opened, and Kalor squeezed through, his 9 legs barely fitting in the human-designed space. "She means we, all of us. The fighters from the station have been talking. We want to help." Jack looked at them. These 2 who had been his enemies, then his allies, and now friends. You realize what you're signing up for. This isn't going to be one dramatic escape. This is going to be investigations, legal battles, probably more fighting. "Good," Kalor said simply. "I've been fighting for others' entertainment my whole life. Now I get to fight for something that matters." "Besides," Zira added, "someone needs to keep you from doing something stupidly heroic. You have a bad habit of almost dying to make a point." Jack laughed, then winced as it pulled at his injuries. "Fine. But we do this smart. No more walking into death traps without a plan. You had a plan, Kalor asked, genuinely surprised. I had the outline of a plan. The rest was improvisation. That's not reassuring, Zira muttered. Captain Walsh's voice came over the intercom. Jack, if you're awake, you might want to see this. A holographic display materialized in the medical bay, showing a news feed. The headline read, Hero of the Arena Speaks Human Engineer, Exposes Gladiatorial Slave Trade. But it wasn't Jack on the screen. It was a recorded message from Gorvik, clearly made in desperation. The crime lord was trying to spin the story, claiming Jack had destroyed legitimate entertainment, that the fighters had volunteered, that it was all legal. Then the feed cut to another figure, a Felinar in official robes. Zira gasped. That's my father, she breathed. The king of the Felinar Confederation. The king spoke with quiet authority. My daughter was taken from us 6 months ago, sold into slavery, forced to fight for the amusement of criminals. She was freed by the courage of a human engineer and a champion who chose conscience over victory. The Felinar Confederation stands with the survivors of Gorvik's arena. We demand justice. The feed continued, showing more leaders, more species, all unified in their condemnation. Gorvik had made a fatal error. He'd taken from too many powerful families, thinking their loved ones had simply disappeared. Well, Jack said quietly, looks like we've got support. My father, Zira said, her voice thick with emotion. I thought he'd given up looking for me. Nobody gives up on family, Jack said. Trust me. I'm an engineer. We never give up on anything, especially not the things that matter. Dr. Martinez entered, checking his readouts. You need rest, all of you, out. Let him heal. But as they turned to leave, Jack called out, Hey, both of you! They turned back. Thank you for having my back in there, for trusting me when I barely had a plan. Kalor did something Jack had never seen from the warrior before. He bowed, all 9 legs folding in a gesture of deep respect. You gave me back my honor, Jack Raynor. That is a debt I can never repay. Same goes for me, Zira said. Though I'm not bowing, my species doesn't do that. As they left, Jack lay back in the medical bed, staring at the ceiling. A week ago, he'd been nobody. A maintenance engineer fixing coolant leaks on a cargo hauler. Now he was the human who'd broken the arena, started a revolution, and apparently kicked off a sector-wide investigation into illegal fighting rings. They said humans couldn't survive the arena, he murmured to himself, smiling. They were right. We don't just survive. We thrive. We adapt. And we change everything. Outside his window, the stars streaked by as the Persistence made its way toward the Galactic Council station. There would be testimony to give, more fights to face, and a whole system of exploitation to dismantle. But for now, Jack Raynor, maintenance engineer and accidental revolutionary, closed his eyes and rested. He'd earned it. After all, breaking an entire gladiatorial empire was exhausting work. 2 weeks later, Jack stood before the Galactic Council, the massive amphitheater filled with representatives from every major civilization in the sector. Kalor stood to his right, Zira to his left. Behind them, dozens of arena survivors waited to testify. Mr. Raynor, the council president, a crystalline being whose voice resonated like wind chimes, addressed him. Your testimony has been illuminating. But there are those who claim you destroyed a legitimate entertainment enterprise through sabotage and violence. Gorvik sat in the defendant's box, somehow having been captured despite the pirate's best efforts. His 4 eyes gleamed with malice as he watched Jack. That's an interesting interpretation, Jack said calmly. May I show the council something? Without waiting for permission, he pulled out a small device from his pocket, the same device he'd used to record in the arena, but now repaired and modified. This contains something more than just the arena footage, Jack announced. You see, when I said I was just a maintenance engineer who got captured by pirates, that was true. But I left out one detail. Zyra turned to stare at him. Jack. He smiled at her apologetically, then continued. 6 months ago, I was hired for a maintenance job, a very specific job, to install monitoring equipment in various illegal fighting rings across the sector. The client was anonymous, paid in untraceable credits. The counsel murmured. Gorvik's eyes narrowed. I needed the money, Jack continued. So I took the job, installed the equipment without asking questions. But then, I started wondering who would want to monitor these places without shutting them down, so I did something I shouldn't have. I modified the equipment to copy all data to a secondary storage that only I could access. He activated the device. Holographic displays filled the amphitheater, showing dozens of fighting rings, thousands of transactions, and most importantly, communications between the ring operators. Every illegal fighting ring in 3 sectors, Jack said. Their locations, their operators, their supply chains for capturing fighters. 5 years of evidence, all stored here. Impossible, Gorvik shouted. You were just maintenance crew. Exactly, Jack said. Nobody notices maintenance crew. We're invisible. We go everywhere, fix everything, and people talk around us like we're not even there. He looked directly at Gorvik. You yourself said it. Humans are the galaxy's janitors. Well, you're right. And janitors have keys to every door. The council president leaned forward. Are you saying you plan to be captured? No, Jack laughed. That part was definitely not planned. Getting grabbed by pirates and sold to Gorvik was bad luck. But once I was in the arena, I realized I had an opportunity, not just to escape, but to do what my anonymous employer apparently wanted: document everything from the inside. Who was your employer? The president asked. Jack's expression grew serious. I didn't know at the time, but I figured it out when I saw who came forward to support us. He turned to look at Zyra. It was your father, wasn't it? Zyra's eyes widened. What? The king of the Felinar Confederation stood up in the viewing gallery. His voice carried across the amphitheater. 6 months ago, my daughter disappeared. I suspected she'd been taken by the fighting rings, but I had no proof, no legal way to search for her. So I hired someone to gather evidence, someone with the skills to go unnoticed, to document everything without raising suspicion. He looked at Jack with what might have been respect. I hired the best maintenance engineer in the sector. I never imagined he would end up in the arena himself, much less that he would save my daughter personally. You knew, Zyra's voice was shocked. You knew where I was. I suspected. But suspicion isn't proof. And without proof, the council wouldn't act. The king's composure cracked slightly. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, waiting while you were in danger. But I knew if we moved too soon, Gorvik would disappear, and the rings would continue. Jack nodded. That's why I made sure to broadcast everything when I was in the arena. Not to the authorities. They'd have raided the place and Gorvik would have escaped. I broadcast it to the one group that would take it personally: the pirates. They have their own code, their own justice. I knew they'd hunt him down. You manipulated everyone, Gorvik snarled. The fighters, the pirates, even the king. No, Jack said firmly. I gave everyone the truth and let them decide what to do with it. Kalor chose to trust me. Zyra chose to help. The other fighters chose freedom. The pirates chose justice. Even you, Gorvik, made a choice. You chose to panic, to overload the gravity, to destroy your own station rather than lose control. He turned back to the council. Every piece of evidence is here. Every transaction, every kidnapping, every murder for sport. Enough to shut down every illegal fighting ring in the sector and prosecute everyone involved. The council president was silent for a long moment. Mr. Rayner, you undertook an unauthorized intelligence operation that resulted in massive property damage and loss of life. I survived, Jack corrected. We all survived. That's what humans do. That's what all of us do when we work together. We survive impossible odds and change the game in the process. He saved us all. Kalor spoke up, his voice carrying the authority of 50 victories. Not through strength or violence, but through intelligence and compassion. He saw enemies and made them allies. He saw a death trap and made it a door to freedom. More voices joined in. The arena survivors, each telling their story, each crediting Jack with their freedom. The testimonies went on for hours, painting a picture of systematic abuse that the council could no longer ignore. Finally, the council president raised a crystalline hand for silence. The council has reached a decision. All illegal fighting rings identified in Mr. Rayner's evidence will be shut down immediately. All operators will be prosecuted. All fighters will be freed and offered rehabilitation and support. The amphitheater erupted in cheers, but the president wasn't finished. Furthermore, Mr. Jack Rayner is hereby appointed as special investigator for the council's new anti-slavery task force, with full authority to investigate and document any suspected trafficking operations. Jack blinked. I'm sorry. What, I'm just a maintenance engineer? Not anymore, the president said. And there might have been amusement in that crystalline voice. Consider it community service for your unauthorized operation. Or, the being added more gently, consider it an opportunity to keep fixing broken things, just on a larger scale. Jack looked at Kalor and Zira. Both were grinning. We're with you, Zira said simply. Partners. All the way, Kalor added. Someone needs to keep you from getting captured again. Besides, Zira added with a smirk, I need to have a long conversation with my father about hiring people to spy on criminal organizations, without telling his daughter she's the one being searched for. As they left the council chambers, Jack found himself walking between his two unlikely friends, the former enemies who'd become his closest allies. Behind them, hundreds of freed fighters were beginning new lives. Ahead of them, a galaxy full of problems that needed fixing. So, Zira asked, what's our first mission, Special Investigator Rayner? Jack pulled up a datapad, scrolling through reports. There's a mining operation in the Outer Rim. Workers haven't been allowed to leave in 2 years. Might be nothing, might be something. Sounds like something that needs investigating, Kalor said, his 9 legs clicking with anticipation. Sounds like something that needs fixing, Jack corrected. Then he grinned. Good thing I know a thing or two about maintenance. As their ship departed the council station, heading toward their first official mission, Jack couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. A month ago, he'd been nobody special, just another human trying to make a living in a galaxy that didn't think much of his species. Now he was the human who'd walked into the deadliest arena in the sector and walked out without a scratch. Well, without any permanent scratches anyway. But more importantly, he'd proven something. Not just that humans could survive anything, but that when different species worked together, when they chose cooperation over competition, understanding over fear, they could break any system designed to oppress them. Hey Jack, Zira called from the pilot's seat. We're getting a priority message. From who? Anonymous, but it's authenticated with your old maintenance company codes. Jack opened the message. It was simple. Heard you're looking for broken things to fix. Check the coordinates attached. You'll find something worth your time. A friend. Trap, Kalor asked. Probably, Jack admitted. But that's never stopped us before. Us, Zira repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, chasing another mystery, another wrong to right, Jack Rayner smiled. They'd said humans couldn't survive the arena. They'd been wrong about that. They'd been wrong about a lot of things. And Jack, along with his friends, was going to enjoy proving them wrong every single time. The arena had been just the beginning. The real work of fixing the galaxy's broken systems had only just begun. But with Kalor's strength, Zira's cunning, and a human's stubborn refusal to give up. They might just pull it off. After all, Jack thought as stars streaked past the window, the best maintenance always started with breaking things down before building them back better. The galaxy had no idea what was coming,